This is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button, and our guest today is Jean Allman Kitchin. Jean, welcome.
Thank you, Alan. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, and it's quite a different role for me because I'm used to interviewing people. I would be much more comfortable if I were interviewing you.
Well, we're turning the tables on you a little bit here this evening. Let me say before we get started, Jean, a little bit about you just for the benefit of our audience. Jean is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and in fact has continued in the education realm for a good number of years since she was a student, having in fact served on the Board of Trustees at the University of North Carolina. Jean is one who has been involved in a lot of things over her lifetime and continues to be. She is a businesswoman. She's got interests in cooking, and she's been a long-time media person, more on the television side than the radio side, I guess. Is that right, Jean?
That's right. Started in actually 1980 in Wilmington on the noon show, the Jim Burns show. People might recognize that. I was his gourmet cook for a while. He loved it because the camera people all got to eat the food afterwards. I mean, I think they wanted more to eat the food than they wanted to see the recipes. Was Harris Teeter's cook for a number of years.
Oh, is that right?
Doing a morning show in Wilmington for the ABC affiliate. And then in the Rocky Mount area, in the back of the business that I ran, we had a television cooking studio for 9 years until Hurricane Floyd took out the cable channel location. People had a ball, totally out of their element, coming in and having to prepare dishes.
I guess I will think of you as the predecessor to Vivian Howard.
Oh, wow. What an honor. A compliment. Thank you.
Media, cooking.
Nowhere close, but yeah. Oh, she's great. Aren't we proud of her in North Carolina?
Yeah, what a great thing. She's got a great restaurant. Jean has also, for most of her life, in fact, in one way or another, served in advisory roles in a number of capacities in areas ranging from healthcare to assisting with disadvantaged young people, and along the way has won a number of awards and been recognized in various contexts. And given our time, Jean, we'll just leave it there with respect to those generalities. I suppose, though, we shouldn't go on without identifying you, too, as a wife and mother and grandmother.
Absolutely.
Family is important to you.
They are. They are. My two sons, I just caution people, do not tell your kids they can be anything and go anywhere because they might take that literally. My sons are both in California, which is way too far away, but they're happy. They're happily married, have children, love their jobs. So I certainly don't bemoan that. I just wish they were closer. And my husband was widowed in my 40s, as was he, and we met on a blind date. He has a daughter who lives in Raleigh with a 2-year-old and 4-year-old little boy, so we thoroughly enjoy them. But life is good, Alan. Life is very good.
I'll tell you what, Jean, let me take that last comment of yours and have you just expand a little bit on it, perhaps with your having in mind one of these songs that you've identified for us. I think I share the impressions of a lot of people that you're an upbeat, can-do person with a creative mindset. And you were telling me before we came into the studio something about your special interest and preference for North Carolina. And I think probably in one way or another, all that's tied together. Tell us about it.
Okay. Was born here. My father was at North Carolina State University. When I went to Carolina, it was very clear that I could always yell for Carolina, but never against state. I think North Carolina is about the best, in my opinion, it's the best place. It's geographically beautiful with the coast and the mountains, and I certainly have enjoyed both. I enjoyed the interest in the arts. I love the fact that within the Triangle, our research institutions, that we have the highest percentage of PhDs and thinkers and creators and researchers in the world. We have people who care deeply about others, who do a lot of public service. Through the years, through doing television interviews, I think I've met the best of the best for people who truly, truly care about others, about elevating their state, whether it's in the field of healthcare, education, just a plethora of fantastic people. I've lived other places. I've lived in Philadelphia. Of course, I visit California seeing my kids. When I come home, I agree with James Taylor. Carolina's in my mind. But when I sold my business a couple of years ago, I mentioned to my husband, we could live anywhere, but where I want to live is in North Carolina. I just can't see leaving we take for granted the kindness and the civility. I mean, people let you pull in front of them out of a parking lot. People wave and say, hey. I truly cherish and value those things. And when I was in California, nothing in the pejorative about them, but I was walking down the streets in Palo Alto smiling at people saying, hey. They didn't say hey back. And I like that friendliness. And we have it here, Alan. We've got a real market on people just being kind to people here.
Sounds like a fitting introduction to the song. I don't think anything more needs to be said. You and James Taylor, Appreciating North Carolina. Let's hear the song.
Okay.
Carolina in My Mind by
Great.
James Taylor.
In my mind, I'm gone, say nice things about me, 'cause I'm gone, solid gone, got to carry on without me.
That was Carolina in My Mind by James Taylor. If you're just joining us, this is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button, and our guest today is Jean Almond Kitchin. Jean, question is, where do we go from here? There's so much we could talk about.
I'm still singing along with James Taylor. So.
I mentioned in our earlier segment your various advisory roles. Let me ask you this. Why do you think it is that you've found yourself in settings where advising is so much of what you do and what people look to you for?
I've had so many interesting experiences, whether it's starting in the field of education with being a secondary teacher, but then media opens up opportunities to meet people. And as you know, Alan, in the field, every time I interview somebody, it's like a little mini education. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to espouse that I'm an expert in anything, but I know a little bit about a lot of things. And networking has always been really important to me, especially when it can be helpful to somebody to link them to someone who can provide more information or more care for them. But it's evolved, and I would have to say, because of running a business, got very involved in pharmacy, running 3 independent pharmacies, and volunteered. I will volunteer in a heartbeat for something, and I hope nobody's listening who's going to say, aha, I'm looking for somebody to do something. But I really think that when the Lord gives you the talents or the gifts or the capability to know that we can make a difference or help, it's our obligation to do that. I had wonderful parents as great role models. They were honorable, kind, cared about others, very professional. And in the morning, I wake up and I try to say, don't let me miss an opportunity to do something. And I've seen when I really think about that, and I think if everyday things happen, that we have a fleeting second, we can either think, wait a minute, I can do something about that, or I can get involved, or I have something that I can lend to that to make a difference.
What you're talking about reminds me of the verses in Proverbs that say that there's wisdom in many counselors.
Mm-hmm.
People don't look to others for advice, for their knowledge exclusively, but it's because there's wisdom in that knowledge. And it strikes me that that's what people look to you for.
Well, and I've had to hone some skills. Like when I went on the school board and was publicly elected a couple times to that, having served on appointed boards, it's very different when one has no control over the people with whom one serves. And there's a learning curve of respect for, I may think I'm right, but other people think they're right too. And to learn to listen to them and to create a consensus crafted around their opinions matter too. And let's try to come together and create something better that any one of us independently came in thinking was the best way. That's a skill. And of course, listening as an interviewer, you've learned listening is a very good thing to do very often. Keep your mouth shut and and take in what other people have to say, because often you miss that little spark or that very special something if you're wanting to jump in and talk yourself. Although I welcome having you jump in anytime. But no, I think I've just had a wealth of wonderful opportunities to learn things.
Let me take that invitation to jump in here and shift gears on you a little bit. You've identified another song for us, You Raise Me Up by Josh Groban, and you were telling me before we came into the studio something that I guess is not a surprise really to anybody who's lived life for any length of time, that there have been disappointments and challenges in your life, and those relate, I guess, to what makes this song special to you.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Clearly does. I have, as anybody who's lived a while, has seen sadness and hardship. My late husband was at home dying for a year, slowly. I've lost both parents, which one would think, that eventually we do. And they lived long lives. They were wonderful lives. I've lost a brother recently. My husband lost his daughter a few years ago. But every time something like that happens, God gives us the ability to help other people more, because I can look in people's eyes when they're suffering loss and truly say on many levels, I know how you feel. I'm a true believer. I just think we can't do it by ourselves. And I think kindness and humility, and of course the example set by Christ of humility and his concentration on it many times throughout the Bible, are important. Throughout the sad times, Alan, I, like probably so many people listening, when I remarried and found out he was told he would die, I was on my knees, just begging and crying and saying, God, why? Why? Help me. And he did. You don't always get the answer you want, but so often when I've wanted things to happen and happen now, when they finally did happen, I saw why there was the growth of patience, the growth of understanding, and often the outcome was better than I even prayed for. So I think we need to not forget that there is God, always there raising us up and lifting us up, even if it's not. Sometimes I've said, give me a billboard. I really need to make this clear to me. But no, we all need to be aware that we don't do it ourselves. We do it through the gifts and through the abilities of a loving God.
A great introduction to the song, and it occurs to me, I've heard other people talk about this song in a more human-oriented setting or a more human-focused setting. That is, that there are people in our lives who raise us up too, who support us. And of course, to take what you've just said, isn't it true we can view that as God working through people in our lives?
But we have to use what we've been given to help others. We can't bury it. We've got to take it and pass it on or pay it forward or whatever, because we need each other. That's what you said. I'm a very busy person. I get up and go out the door every morning because I get as much or more from other people than I give to them. And I think that's all part of the beauty of, the way God created us, is we do lift up each other and use our gifts for each other, but we're supposed to.
Let's hear the song, You Raise Me Up by Josh Groban.
When I am dying,
That was Josh Groban, You Raise Me Up. Our guest today is Jean Almond Kitchin. Jean, we were talking before that song about your view of your role with respect to those whom you meet and how it is that you have the strength and the direction to do what you do. I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit again here, but you can tie it together. I'd be interested in your view of race relations in our society generally and in your experience. I know from having talked with you before we came into the studio that you certainly have had and do have interaction regularly with a very diverse group of people. What are your thoughts on that?
Alan, I was very blessed to grow up with parents who did not see skin color. We're all children of God. And even in high school, and this makes me sad to reflect, I was told that I was going to be sharing a locker at Needham Broughton in Raleigh with an African-American girl who, it was early integration. Would that be okay, or would I need another locker? Well, it never occurred to me that it wouldn't be okay. She was a student there, and I was a student there, and actually she was wonderful. It breaks my heart because I think deep down people are kind and could handle it. I think a lot of it's stirred up externally for reasons that don't need to be. When I go to Word Tabernacle, which is a mega church for Bible study. The first year I went there, people would smile and say hey to me. I was probably one of a handful of white people there. But after I had been there a year, they started hugging me. And I asked the pastor, why are they just starting to hug me? He said, they didn't know why you were here, and they didn't know that you would stay. And I said, well, of course I'm going to stay. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm getting more out of this than I'm putting into this. And he said, we needed to get to know you, to trust you. And that was very sad to me, because I just think that if we could take some of the undertones of adversary and accusation and whatnot out of a lot of this and just let people be nice people to each other. I know that sounds really naive, but I don't prefer the people who are screaming and hollering. And I think Martin Luther King had it right. I'm so sorry that his life was cut short, because he was helping right a lot of wrongs, but they were getting corrected. But I think he wasn't for violence and hurting each other. And I tell you that poverty in a lot of areas of our state where there's not strength at home and a mother and a father, those need to be addressed. But it's all of our problem. When people in our society hurt, it's all of our concern and all of our problem.
There was an event at the Rocky Mount Mills project, the project that Capital Broadcasting is engaged in, Sunday Supper at the Mills.
Right.
That I know you had some significant involvement in.
We loved that. We saw in the News and Observer that there was Fayetteville Street. It was blocked off around Thanksgiving a couple years ago. And Jenny Moorbutter, who's our Tar River Region United Way exec, called me in and said, we need to make money in the springtime. Can you help us? So I saw that in the paper and thought, what a really cool thing to bring together a cross section, just a snapshot of our community. So we planned it, and through the grace of Rocky Mount Mills and Capital Broadcasting, they let us use their beautiful grassy lawn. But Alan, as we started doing this, we wanted everybody to feel welcome. And the price point was, I think, $20. And I started calling people and saying, would you buy X number of tickets so we could give them to the United Community Ministries or to the Christian Fellowship Home for Men, because they couldn't afford to buy tickets to come, because we wanted everybody to come and for people to not know socioeconomically where anybody came from, but just to get together on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, play cornhole toss. Little kids were running around. It was the biggest mixture of old, young, money, not money. I mean, I think there were probably even homeless people there who got tickets and came. But 950 people showed up and came and ate and enjoyed a meal. We had prayer at the beginning, and we just got to know each other. And it was just wonderful. And people said, this is what Rocky Mount needs to be. And I say, this is what all cities need to be.
Tell us about this third song, Jean.
Oh, I love this song. I've done telethons through the years for Christian Fellowship Home for Men, which is the halfway house for substance abusers. We saved it through a telethon 10 years ago, which was just wonderful. But we were raising money for that, and somebody sang this, and I think we had more phone calls with donations after that than any time. But
just so our listeners know what we're talking about Wind Beneath My Wings.
Absolutely. When my mother at 95 died, and I spoke at her funeral and my dad's funeral, it was a challenge, but somebody needed to discuss what great parents they were and do funny things just to humanize them. But she had asked the minister at Springmore to sing this, Phyllis Mayo, and she did, and it was always very special to her. And it has been special to me because we all need to know that God is our hero. When we least think He's there stronger than ever. And if we just take deep breaths, try to practice patience, and try to share the characteristics that we know that we should and that we enjoy, that when other people share with us on a daily basis. But we've always got wind beneath our wings, but we also need to say thank you and be prayerful and praiseful for those wins, because we don't deserve it. We really, when I think of the things that I do, the opportunities I missed, the things that I wish I'd done, maybe a word that I shouldn't have said, God loves us anyway, and He forgives us, and He is the wind beneath our wings.
Jean, it's been really special to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. You're an inspiration and just a real encourager.
Well, thank you. And I'm really honored that you asked me. And I just hope and wish everybody who's listening will take to heart a lot of what we talked about, because we really do matter to other people and we really can make a difference.
Let's hear the song, Wind Beneath My Wings by Bette Midler.
Thank God for you, the wind beneath my wings.
You've been listening to Grace Notes, a special program here on Life 103.1 featuring people who may be relatively unknown, but who meet life's challenges in ways that brighten the lives of those around them. Our producer is Christina Dolan. I'm Alan Button, and we invite you to join all of us here at the station again next Friday at 5:30 for Grace Notes on Life 103.1.